We are live, and we are here talking with Franco Cavaleri from from Biologic Pharmamedical. Hey, Franco.
Hey, there we are.
Awesome. This is fantastic. It's good that even though that we're so close together during the summer months, the winter months, I'm like 1,000 miles away. You're up there in cold Canada. How's it up there right now?
I don't like that, man. I'm coming to see you for that summer month or that winter month.
So Franco, people know you in our community as the inventor of PowerKirk 30. We call it the world's strongest anti-inflammatory. I know you don't make those claims necessarily, but we have nothing else that's better. It's had a major impact on our hundreds of thousands of subscribers around the world.
Right.
And we thank you for everything that you've done. You've dedicated your entire life to actually creating products that help people. And it's because of a personal need. So I'd like to just ask you, and for our audience, the ones who don't know you yet, why don't you just give us a little bit of background of who you are and how you got here? I mean, like, what happened? You were, and to preface it off, is I knew you as a bodybuilder. I watched you in 1988 at the, I guess it was the Westerns, probably, the Western Canadians.
Yeah.
And you were a middleweight who won the overall, which never happens. And at that time I said, I'm going to meet that guy. And you walked through my door literally 30 years later at Human Garage.
That's crazy.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about how you got here, the story of what made Franco, and how you got here.
Well, as you said, my early years into nutrition and wellness and performance were facilitated by sports, soccer, and then bodybuilding. And, I began to study nutrition and biochemistry and went directly from high school to University of British Columbia to do my undergrad in human nutrition. And that during that whole undergrad phase, I was climbing the ladder in bodybuilding. And there were two things that were working for me. One, I was definitely a keener when it came to the academic process because I was motivated by sport and by being the best I could be physically. And in order to do that, cognitively, you've got to make sure you're performing by researching, by keeping your mind focused on targets, and all that stuff kind of brought in, meditation. It brought in visualization to the point where, like I felt like I was moving mountains just using these concepts. But on top of that, my entire undergrad at University of British Columbia was focused on me becoming a guinea pig to utilize technologies, evaluate blood work, determine whether I was in anabolic or catabolic phase. I mean, testing all kinds of things that were happening through blood work, through supplementation. And so that entire climb to Mr. Vancouver, then Mr. British Columbia, then Mr. Western Canada, then the Nationals, and then Mr. IFBB North America and LA. It was a technical climb that was monitored by precise blood work. So it allowed me to really evaluate what I was doing from my training programs all the way to whatever I was doing nutritionally. And everything was guided that way. So I was very fortunate to have those tools before me. But just before I competed in the Mr. IFBB North America, in '91, I was supposed to compete. I got sick. And I had this illness that was kind of brewing for a long time while I was in my undergrad at UBC. And every time exams would come around, it would get worse. So it appeared to me that, I wasn't capable of dealing with the stressors, and maybe that stress of the exam period was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, compiling. I mean, we were lifting such heavy weights that everything I did in my day, in my week, in my month revolved around scheduling the training, the eating, and so, I mean, that in itself is enough stress. And I figured, okay, well, the academics, is another level. But what happened was when I was competing and preparing for Mr. North America, and I was, if you see pictures of me, you would never recognize me. I weighed off season 220 pounds. I was squatting over 700 pounds, 745 plates on each side, bench pressing over 500 pounds, shoulder pressing behind the neck 315. Like it's a completely different human being. I feel like it was a completely different life. But I ended up months before going to Los Angeles to compete in this show, I was sick. and I ended up bleeding out, and I was bleeding in the hospital. They didn't know what was wrong with me. Eventually I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, and a severe form of ulcerative colitis. What, in a nutshell, what I determined 2 weeks into being in the hospital, losing 20 pounds within 2 weeks in the hospital while bleeding, determined that I was using a curcumin extract and really monitoring the actual constituents of the extract while I was preparing for these shows. Because, as I explained earlier, these weights that you're lifting, I mean, you need countermeasures in order to recover from that lifting. And for me, the anti-inflammatory activity of curcumin, and I was taking grams worth. I was talking, we're talking about spoonfuls of pure curcumin in drinks that turned orange and turned everything orange. And the objective for me was, if I can induce an anti-inflammatory effect after the training intensely like that, I could get to the gym and train that body part sooner than my competitor can, and in the week. So in other words, instead of training a body part once a week, I could train 2 to 3 times a week and still recover. And then that what would happen over a 2-year period of time, that's a massive advantage over someone that's training half as much as you are, and at a frequency per body part that's half. So that was the philosophy at the time. But what happened was, I realized that this technology that I was using for training recovery was also taking the edge off of this ulcerative colitis. And I actually stopped using it because there was a global shortage in 1991. Believe it or not, way back in 91, global shortage of this curcumin. I couldn't find it anymore. So I said, you know what, whatever, I have, life goes on. I have to keep training and do my thing. And then I began to bleed out, and nobody knew what the problem was until I was formally diagnosed by biopsy. And they said, we don't know how you've been able to do what you're doing. The way you're doing it, it's impossible. Your life, sir, is going to change today, because next week we're going into surgery and we're taking out your large intestine, because with this condition, it's an autoimmune condition. So the immune system is attacking your body, a specific tissue, but it's not that specific, because when you're talking about any autoimmune condition, it's very systemic. So you have a lot of inflammatory activity that occurs throughout the body. It's a cloud that really interferes with a lot of biological functions. It increases the risk for cardiovascular disease, joint disease, all kinds of things. And so I quickly said, I'm in this hospital bed. I'm going to go back to doing what I was doing. I know it didn't completely alleviate all the symptoms, but I'm going to begin to modify this because there's something to it. So I left the hospital literally with family, actually, as crutches, leaving. I could not walk. That's how sick I was. And, I was loaded up with corticosteroids by the hospital, because that gave me a little bit of relief, but it's short term. And literally went back to doing what I was doing. And within a couple of months, I was actually back in the gym training again. And I actually won the Mr. IFBB North American Championships with a gateway to professional status 1 year later. So after, coming out of this illness, and, the magazine write-ups were, this guy comes out of nowhere and wins it unanimously for the first time ever in the history of this show. So, I was blessed because I had good genetics. I was blessed because I understood the need for research and development and constant evolution, not only of, your physical being, but your cognitive standpoint and your emotional and cognitive being. And all of that came together and really gave me the platform to win. And then I realized, okay, well, what did I win? What I won here today is a starting point. I love this term where I say, I got to the finish line, but it's the new start line, because a lot of things began to come together. I realized, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? Am I going to be a competitive bodybuilder, and where is that going to take me? For me, it was a sign. I had developed something. I realized something. It was an epiphany, and I needed to go that direction in the research to determine what was happening that I could expand on and bring to other consumers who I knew were suffering the way I was from a disease that really leaves you debilitated. And the only alternative you have in many cases is really resection of the large intestine, and you're taking away the component of the body that your immune system's attacking, but it doesn't take away the anomaly of the immune system dysfunction that occurs throughout the body. So I was aware of that in early stages, and I was supposed to go into my post-grad at the University of British Columbia after completing my undergrad, but it was right at the gateway when I had won Mr. North America, and I said, I'm going to use the win at this contest, which is a big win for a Canadian to take, and I'm going to marry that with my undergrad nutritional education. And I brought my philosophies to market as a sports nutrition line that represented everything I was doing to get to what I wanted to be. And hopefully to be able to get people the tools mentally, emotionally, and physically to reach their goals, whatever they are. Because, you know, what I really learned through that process was, in fact, process and how to get to your goal, no matter what it was. You know, first of all, you have to be as healthy as you could be mentally to be able to pierce all the challenges, every challenge that's going to come across when you're trying to attain a goal, especially if it's something outside the norm or the typical, and then the physical capacity to be able to resist all the strain and stress that it takes to get there. So I mean, that was the goal.
So yeah. So I mean, here you are. You're literally Mr. North America. You're in the magazines. I just wished I had a physique like you. I watched you compete and said, I'm out of here. I did one show after watching you, and I just said, this is not going to work. There's people like you out there, and you were diagnosed. And for any of you guys who are watching right now, if you know anybody who has autoimmune conditions, if you have known anybody who has an autoimmune disease, anything from ulcerative colitis all the way through to Crohn's, anything with alopecia, anything, that we're going to talk about some stuff. We're going to talk about the world's best hair renewal product on this podcast or on this live as well. So please send it out. Give us a bunch of likes right now, and then just send the algorithm or send it out to a friend. And if you do that, it just helps us with the algorithm. So Franco, we came to you. I mean, PowerKirk has made a massive change in the lives of people, and it still is today, and animals, which is really, really cool. Which I'm looking forward to Puppy Kirk coming out soon. But we know you for that. Now, in our program here, we started going out and we started looking for products that, in other words, the least amount of product that we could get the most amount of effect out of the body. Kind of our own biohacking after 10 years of clinical practice. We found that the two primary elements that were missing in everybody's life was the diatomaceous earth and silica, because it's being depleted from the environmental conditions, and also being depleted by chemicals that we're ingesting in our food, and also then the Irish sea moss. Now, when we came and we brought you the Irish sea moss, and we brought you the diatomaceous earth, and we wanted you to encapsulate it because it was hard for people to get it. And then you immediately jumped to, well, let's put Glavia in there for the Irish sea moss. So let me ask you a question. What the heck is Glavia? Why is it important? And why did you put it into our Irish sea moss?
Well, Glavia is an interesting technology. I'm ecstatic that I've been able to actually, hone in and find things that I think are necessary for me. It starts with me. What do I need to be the best I can be as a human being? And then I begin to work on those categories, because it's not about me. It's more about how can I then share that with other people. And Glavia generally was generated a long time ago when I was formulating for my company and other companies protein powders and things that required sweetness. And we all know that, there's so many products out there that have artificial sweeteners in them, and there's consequences with a lot of these artificial chemicals, some of which are immediate, some of which are long-term, and some are just, they're unknowns. And so this became an agent that was a dietary supplement that carried with it sweetness that could parallel, sugar or any of these artificial sweeteners without any artificial agents in it. So I developed this technology in order to be able to use, even if we needed to use some of the natural stevia and other things like that, you don't have to use very much of it in order to really get the sweetness you need to a level that's functional. And what this does is many things. It actually serves as a zero carbohydrate, zero calorie agent that carries with it its own sweetness from natural extracts. And what we do is we'll take glycosides from some plants, and then we bind it to an amino acid backbone. And that carries it and allows it to stick to your tongue to the point where you only need minute levels of sweetness in order to create profound feeling of round sweetness throughout the mouth. And
wow, it is round too. It's like it tastes like I'm eating sugar, but it's not. And it's like a little tiny little scooper.
Yeah.
And it feels like I had a teaspoon of sugar, but it does more than sweeten.
Exactly. So just to go back quickly, sugar, like we said, gives you a round feeling in the mouth for like a three-dimensional sweetness. But if you take stevia or other things, it's one-dimensional. It's in and out, and it's flat. And you're like, whoa, what just happened? But this gives you the same roundness. The second thing it does is that once it goes into the body, it helps your body clear blood sugar to the point where, you know, now we've got what's called an NPN. We've got Health Canada approving the monographs after 2.5 years of supplying our research. It's a phenomenal ingredient. Again, 0 carbs, 0 calories, 0 aftertaste. And then it also helps to maintain healthy blood sugar. Aside from the fact that it's a 0 carb agent, it helps to clear blood sugar effectively so that you're healthier from that standpoint. So the thing is that most of us, as we age, begin to develop insulin resistance. And for many of us, you know, it's minor effect. It doesn't affect the metabolism in a significant way. For a lot of us, it makes it more difficult for us to gather energy from our food, to assimilate nutrition so that we recover. And then we start to put on some fat because of this insulin resistance. Now, insulin resistance is pretty much the characterization or the metabolic activity that leads to the type 2 diabetic state. Type 2 diabetes is ultimately an advanced stage of insulin resistance. So if you can prevent insulin resistance from progressing to a type 2 diabetic stage and maintain its preclinical activity, then you're able to stay healthy longer in life, to maintain better body weight, to maintain appetite control, to recover from physical work better, maintain more muscle, maintain cognitive activity. It's amazing. So why did we put it in with this? Well, we know, you know, that Irish moss supplies a lot of key minerals, some protein, and it's a great nutritive compound. And so, you know, what better to add something that supports the assimilation of these nutrients and higher bioavailability of these nutrients into the cells so you can concentrate them into the cell better. Secondly, you know, you also have agents, you also have the substance here in the Glavia that supports digestive health, just like the Irish moss does. And so when you came to us with this formula, I thought there are many features that are similar to the Irish moss and the Glavia that can be synergized to amplify the effects of the actual compound you're taking. And secondly, we can add value to that for the consumer because they're going to feel appetite suppression. They're going to feel better control over their appetite and then be able to make choices in their lifestyle and their diet that are based on cognitive choices as opposed to emotional impulses to eat certain things. Typically carbohydrates are emotionally driven.
Yeah, you know,
foods.
I gotta tell you, because when I take it, like, okay, so I brought some down here with me to Mexico, and we have it in our fascial flow product, but I don't actually get to interact with it in that way. So I put some in my smoothie in the morning. I put some just in water, literally in water. I put a little bit of lemon in it. It tastes like a lemon soda, and I didn't realize that it actually naturally suppressed appetite, because my appetite is completely down when I'm using that as a sweetener.
Yeah.
Now the way that it impacts the moss is as I understand it, is that when insulin is a way to push nutrients into a cell. Is it using that same pathway in there?
It's using a similar mechanism as well. Yeah. So I mean, to be frank or Franco with you, you know, for us to make health claims that are drug and hormone related, you know, we have to be careful. Health Canada finally gave us approval to make claims for healthy blood sugar management. The mechanism by which this works is it enhances insulin's function and supports it through various means, mechanistic means. The bottom line is that, you know, you can use it as a sweetener. You know, you talk about making lemonade. Gosh, like I regularly make a big jug of lemonade with water, real lemon juice, and Glavia, and drink that, you know, on a warm day. And my gosh, you're now in control of your diet, and you feel good. The cool thing is that it optimizes also mentation, because when you're enhancing neurological absorption of glucose, which, mind you, which as we age tends to become less efficient, and there's a type 3 type 3 diabetic state that's related to now, where it relates to the inability or the lower efficiency of the neurons to be able to absorb and utilize glucose by way of insulin resistance in the brain. And so
this is why when I take the Irish sea moss, the first thing when I take our fascial flow with the Irish sea moss, the first thing I feel is an electrical charge as soon as it starts to release in my stomach. Then all of a sudden I have this increase in cognitive function. And this is the minerals that I'm taking. It's basically just to get my body with the 94 minerals of the 102 it needs. And I found that personally, like we had gone through the mineral pathway. We had taken trace minerals, then I did shilajit minerals. And then when I went to Irish sea moss, it was like just another level. It was like it was connecting on a way that I hadn't connected before. Then when you put the paired the Glavia with it, I noticed immediately the cognitive increase. I felt more energy with the Irish sea moss, always. I just had some before I went on. And in the gel format, I still like eating the gel format. And then I take the Glavia, and then all of a sudden it's like laser focus and openness. It's not like a stimulant. It's more like just a focus and clear.
But I like to call it a real raw clarity, because like you said, this is not about stimulating the brain. It's about giving it and pushing and facilitating nutrient assimilation and absorption into those neurons so that they're getting everything they need and they can function according to functional activity.
You're removing the restrictions, basically.
Yeah,
so basically, Glavia is like fascial maneuvers. It removes the restriction.
Yeah, at a cellular level.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so to stay on track time-wise, so we have the Glavia that we paired with the Irish sea moss. Then we went all the way over to the fascial foundation. The interesting thing is that we say all the time that bones aren't structured because they don't touch, and fascia is structure. And that diatomaceous earth is known for hair, nail, skin, exfoliating the small intestine, increases cognitive functions, regulates hormones. But then we brought it to you again. And you put in a product for us. You put in an ashwagandha product. But the way I tell people, and I don't know enough about it, I say that basically your ashwin or ashwagandha is the same equivalent as power is to curcumin. Your ashwagandha is to your ashwin is to ashwagandha.
Absolutely.
So why did we put in the ashwin and which is the ingredient in there? And what is it? Why don't we just call it ashwagandha?
Well, that's a great question. So the ashwagandha, first of all, we know ashwagandha in general is known to support general health, improve your ability to cope with stress, oxidative stress, aging, stamina. There's some purported benefits with regards to male fertility and things like that. Is very different than any ashwagandha, and I'm going to describe it in the same context that we've described the power curc, because that curcumin patent is also very different than any curcumin. So both curcumin and ashwagandha are made up of multiple constituents, right? We know that. Even when you take curcumin from turmeric, we know turmeric is the spice we use as an agent to cook with, and turmeric is made up of 3 to 6% curcumin, and curcumin is the active anti-inflammatory. So then we take it out and you have a 95% curcumin, which you see a lot of in the marketplace. Now, what people don't realize is that within that curcumin, there are multiple curcuminoids that make up this curcumin. And from batch to batch, lot to lot, these curcuminoids fluctuate. So the question I've always had, which led to my discovery to help optimize the anti-inflammatory effect of curcumin for my condition, and the question I had is, what do each of these curcuminoids do at a subcellular level, genomic and proteomic level? And I mapped that out over 7 years and then said, wait a minute, one of these curcuminoids, curcumin 3, is only existing at approximately 1 to 2% concentration in every curcumin extract. If we raise it to 30, it will be able to function and deliver a hit on a protein, a specific protein that regular curcumin cannot inhibit, that is directly involved in inflammatory controls. So you get 2 proteins affected properly because we standardize the curcumin to be able to neutralize 2 proteins in a pathway that are critical for inflammatory control instead of 1 that regular curcumin only inhibits. Now, fast track over to ashwagandha. The question was, what's different? We did the exact same thing with ashwagandha. The only crazy problem was that ashwagandha has 35 withanolides. So we had to analyze the pharmacology to the genomic and proteomic level of that cell for each one of these withanolides, and then re-engineer it so that we're specifically targeting the proteins in the cell that we want, and we maintain it from batch to batch that way. And this is the problem with regular ashwagandha or regular curcumin. Those things fluctuate. So the one you got today is very different than the one you're going to get tomorrow. And therefore, is the one tomorrow going to work the same as the one today if the proportions of the withanolides in ashwagandha have fluctuated? And the answer is no. In fact, everybody says, yeah, don't worry about it. It has 12%. 12% of what? There's 35 withanolides in there. If they move around, the pharmacology changes. Well, they're pretty close to the same structure. When it comes to molecules interacting with receptor sites, pretty close to the same molecule means nothing. That means a very, very different molecule. And
I think there's the same. I think there's the same when we're kids. Close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades.
Exactly. So then what we do is we determine with Ashwith, it can actually enhance in excess of 35% more effectively than purported best ashwagandhas like Sensoril to improve Nrf2. Now, Nrf2 is a transcription factor in our cells that makes, this is critically important, that makes glutathione, superoxide dismutase, and catalase. These are antioxidants that are made inside your cell. So you imagine taking vitamin C and other antioxidants exogenously to affect your body from the outside in. I'm talking about stimulating genomic activity that makes antioxidants inside your cell to protect your DNA, to protect your mitochondria, protect all the organelles in there from the inside out.
So so basically, ashwagandha generally is protecting your cells from the outside in. Ashwin is protecting your cells from the inside out.
Absolutely.
That is fantastic. And when you say 35 times stronger, it's actually, that's not even true, because that assumes that you have 100% efficacy in the actual ashwagandha itself.
Absolutely.
Because we get this all the time. Now when we put that with the diatomaceous earth, now diatomaceous earth is already meant to calm down the nervous system, exfoliate the small intestines, clean it up for autoimmune. So what are some of the benefits that people receive when they take ashwagandha?
Well, you know, as you said, with the diatomaceous earth being, 70 to 85% silica, depending on what types used, you get a lot of silica for bone, skin, hair, health development. But what people don't realize is this exoskeleton that makes up the original organism that diatomaceous earth comes from will also absorb toxins and things that are carried out from the body. So, when you're removing crap that is interfering with metabolic efficiency, but then adding ashwagandha that optimizes cellular function and cleanliness and clears exhaust, boy, you change the way you think and look. And I'll tell you something, when you take the ashwagandha is known to create better thinking, focus, and coping mechanisms of stress. But I feel this happening every time I take it. Within an hour, I feel energy amping up, and then focus.
Yeah, focus. Yeah. And for people that, so we got people trying to maintain, like one of the biggest questions for guys is I want to have more testosterone, or women, I have hormone dysregulation issues. So the combination of these two things, you've got the diatomaceous earth, which is actually helping rebuild and repair the fascia. The silica is bringing water into it. You've got the rebalancing of hormones, and then we throw the ashwin in it. Now you've got the ability to produce more testosterone, more estrogen, more estradiol, and you're actually starting to balance your hormones with these two added together as a supplement.
Yeah, basically ashwagandha is another one of those adaptogens, and it's just helping your body do what it's supposed to do more effectively. Right.
So if I had so one of the things that we notice is people report to us that they are on HRT, hormone replacement therapy. They started with these products. They started with Power Curve 30. They started with the Fascial Foundation, the Fascial Flow. We've had literally thousands of people that have come back and say they've titrated off HRT or hormone replacement therapy, and they're actually, and quite a few numbers, like recently, have said we've completely eliminated just using these products. These are natural products, technically. And we're not ingesting hormones in, but we're just working with the body's natural mechanisms to actually produce or do what it was meant to do. That's what you're doing. Is your technology, your science is allowing the human body to do what it was designed to do, rather than because of all the restrictions that we have in our lives right now. Is that a good, fair statement?
It's a really fair, it is a fair statement. And, you know, as a fundamental underpinning of what Biologic does in general, our philosophy, which is built into the development of the technologies, is that we believe thoroughly in holistic approaches, so that we know, you know, our plants have a polypharmacology that is synergistic in some ways. The challenge is, and there's also benefits to this other, is that allopathic medicine specifically depends on very selective drugs that selectively target a specific target they're looking for. There's a lot of value in that because, you know, they say, for example, polypharmacology is hard to control because you don't know what interactions may occur amongst all these different constituents. Well, there's value, yes, I get that. But the reality is, you know, some of these agents are produced in combination by nature because they actually affect your body in a synergistic way by targeting multiple targets. We've shown that in our research and published it. But
so that's actually a good question, Ashley. I don't want you actually have an interesting way of producing research against this, because what I tell people when I'm telling about who you are is I say that you're the pharmacology of the future, because you're taking and first of all, you're taking active ingredients, you're putting it back into the source products so that there's signal receptors, so that basically the brain, the body, and everything understands what you're doing. And then furthermore, when you're doing this, you've actually, the science behind it is peer-reviewed. You're actually using pharmacology as a way to understand or to peer review, or sorry, to reference against your own. So that means that, and this is why so many people are citing your science right now. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, what does that mean? Because this way we know that you can't argue with your science, because your science has already been argued.
it has been, and it's peer reviewed. So, I mean, hopefully, you know, we have enough there. I mean, all science can be argued when you find evidence, scientific evidence that may show that there's an argument. However, you know, science is science, and the research outcome that's peer reviewed is a research outcome that's peer reviewed. And that's what we rely on. We're not saying, you know, it does this because we think it does this. It does this because we show it in our peer reviewed papers. But the key issue here is that, you know, there's value in what both sides say. But here's the key thing. Let me tell you, when allopathic medical practitioners treat complex diseases like autoimmune conditions and cancers and things like that, they are using cocktails of selective drugs that are targeting specific proteins in multiples, like the polypharmacology that's designed in these natural compounds. Now, the problem is with the natural compounds, and I acknowledge it because I see it all the time, is that the constituents and the proportions in here change all the time, so you have no control over what's coming the next time. And the question is batch number 2 going to have the same proportion? Is it going to do the same thing? And my answer is no, it's not. That's why we hybridized our system. Our philosophy is a hybrid. The hybrid is we want the polypharmacology, but we don't standardize by 95% curcumin. We standardize by locking in each one of these at the level we need to target the proteins we know they're supposed to target. When it comes to ashwagandha, we take the extract. We know there's 3 withanalydes specifically that need to be standardized and specific and reliable every time to be able to hit the pharmacology that we say. We also inhibit telomerase activity, which is an anti-aging strategy. In order for us to make that claim and do it all the time, we have to make sure that withanolide that does that is always there at the concentration we expect it to be there. So you can extract it.
Actually say that. You can actually say it hits the anti-aging systems in our body.
Well, yeah, the actual proteins and targets that are associated with anti-aging, like Nrf2 that I explained earlier with glutathione and telomerase activity. The thing is that when we extract it, we're standardizing for those withanolides as well as the overall. And it's doing, what we're doing is we're saying we are making sure the selectivity that allopathic medicine relates to is there for the targets we know need to be hit, while supplying the synergistic synergistic activity of the holistic approach. So
okay, so I'm dumbing this down a little bit here because I can get lost. I'm a smart dude, and when I talk to you, you're one of the few people on the planet when it comes to the body that when you talk, I can even get lost. So in a simple terms, saying it to a 5-year-old, what does that exactly mean?
Well, what it means is that we're able to deliver a broad activity that affects multiple things in your body that you need to affect in order to be healthy in a broad way. Plus, target a specific protein that we need to make sure is turned on at a level that's very specific every single time in order to help you feel the healthiest you can be, whether we're trying to say we're improving cognitive health, coping mechanisms for oxidative stress and stress in general. We need that protein targeted every time. But if we give you the broad thing, we don't know if we're hitting that guy anymore because it's too broad. But we're supplying the broad thing and the specific protein target. So
basically what you're saying is that this is why the fascial flow and the fascial foundation work consistently. I've been in the supplement industry, a former bodybuilder. I started a few years after you probably, but as a bodybuilder, I was like, sometimes things worked and sometimes they didn't, and I had no reason for it. And so I blame me. I didn't work hard enough. I didn't do enough. When really it was the ingredients that I was putting into my body weren't always
consistent.
the same ingredients.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is forcing a new behavior as this gets out. I mean, our products are flying off the shelf right now, and
because they work.
Yeah, and they work, and you're forcing a new behavior in the industry because you're right in between pharmacology, right in between supplements, and you're saying, well, pharmacology has some good points here. They actually, because they're consistently, reliably targeting and saying and hitting the same thing, so you get a result in your body. And the supplement industry is doing something to try and be natural and holistic and work with the body, and you're doing both of those together with everything that you do. That's a fair statement, right?
Exactly. And I got to tell you, for the longest time, for many years, I was an island in the middle. The naturalist, the holistic guy would say, you're no longer holistic because you're manipulating the holistic system. The pharmaceutical agencies would say, well, you're not selective because you still have a broad spectrum. And I'm in the middle saying, well, I'm both because you need both. And then finally now everybody's saying, holy crap, this stuff actually works, and it works well.
That's the truth of it. It's basically because every part of pharmacology came from nature somewhere at some point.
90% of it. 90%.
Yeah, and that the challenge is that we tend to put those things. Let me talk about this. We tend to take a natural derivative of something that works, and then we put it into petroleum. And when we put it into a petroleum base, it has a generalized side effect in the body. The body says, okay, I can feel it coming in. Like when I put something in my mouth, a chemical, my body thinks I got calcium coming in. But then when I get in my stomach and I digest it, it wasn't calcium, it was a chemical. And my body goes, hey, wait a second here, where's the calcium? And then it goes, I need more of it. So then that causes an addictive cycle, or a cycle that I can't get out of. Whereas I put it back into the pharmacology, and the way you're doing it, I take it in, my body says, oh, I recognize that. Okay, that fires these receptors, it does this with my hormones. But then it goes, when it gets in the stomach, it actually goes, literally, okay, that makes sense, thank you. Instead of where am I missing something? It's oversimplification, but it's generally what our bodies are doing. Yeah. And the difference between what you do and what pharmacology is, right?
Yeah, and let's not get it wrong. There are times when you will need pharmaceutical or allopathic medical intervention in order to create a window of opportunity and relieve symptoms in a way that you may need. Antibiotics, for example, yes, they're way overused today. We're creating problems with the over prescription of antibiotics. But the reality is, a lot of us would die with a very simple infection if we didn't have an antibiotic to take the edge off and give our body an opportunity to recover. But you need to supply these holistic compounds in order to maintain and recover long term. You can't rely on the pharmaceutical medicine long. You need it to create a window of opportunity so that you can recover.
You hit it on the head. You hit it right on the head. I have no problem with pharmacology. Like people demonize pharmacology, and I'm going to tell you, straight up, our body is meant to react to stimulus, and we give our bodies poison all the time to create something good. Our bodies are the healing machines, and what we're doing is stimulating the healing by putting things in. It's not about the actual production of pharmacology. It's about the application of pharmacology. It's about, yes, I'm going to do this for you, but I'm going to give this to you, and you're going to stay on it now for like the rest of your life, rather than give your body, like you said, space and time to get over or to get what it needs to move to the next step.
Yeah.
So that leads me to the next question. So we have these products. We have the PowerCurve 30, which is an ORAC rating of 500,000 compared to the standardized curcumin 9,500. Yes. And even then, people say, well, what if I just took a bunch more? And I'm like, well, one of these tablets is equal to 100 of the competitor. Yeah. It's like, even if you could take 100, your body couldn't process all the other constituents. No. You would start to bog down and create a negative side effect by overtaking it. So this is one of the biggest questions, is that if I have an issue with curcumin, and how come that people that have curcumin like problems or sensitivities don't necessarily have curcumin problems or sensitivities with PowerCurve, for example?
Well, the bioavailability is very, very high. It enters the body quickly. It doesn't interfere with gastrointestinal problems. It's pure and clean, and you don't have a lot of the byproducts that are associated with extraction. There's a lot of extractions out there that use ether, benzene. A lot of these things are carcinogenic, and sometimes, most processes that remove it are not very efficient. So you get residual stuff left over in those extracts. We don't use any of those. We use ethanol, which is the alcohol you drink for leisure and pleasure. And the problem is that the ethanol extract is inefficient, so it costs way more to do it because the yield is lower. But then you have no risk of leaving behind something that's toxic.
So this is why I tell the world that you're the new type of pharmacology, because it's about bringing the power of pharmacology into a natural source with the least amount of impact or insult to the human body. And as a practitioner or a doctor, and I'm not a doctor, but I'm a practitioner, it's do no harm, and it's also the least amount of insult for the greatest input, for the greatest amount of result. Yeah. And this is what your products seem to do. Now, we don't make claims at all, just like you. But I can tell you successfully that we have had people that have brought back medical reversals doing our program and using the supplements that we have that you created. We are having people coming back with autoimmune, Graves' disease, with Crohn's. We're having very great success with rheumatoid arthritis. These disease processes, alopecia, between the combination we do and your products, it seems to be that people are healing themselves. And again, we're not making the claims. They're going in, they have a report that says, I used to have this. Now I don't. Here are the two reports. You can make your own decision. Now, this is the greatest thing in the world, because people are doing this, are coming up to us. We don't have to make the claims. It's already working. I only have to make a claim if I'm trying to convince you that it's going to work. But if it already works, I don't have to make a claim. I just try it and find out the results. So let's go to the next topic. Okay, Franco, when I met you, you had a big head of hair.
Oh, gosh, I did, yeah.
And that hair has gone from this big curly mitt that was swathed over like this, yeah, to it started to recede and stuff like that. Yeah. Now, I've seen you, I've seen the journey. We have a new product coming out, and this product is we're working with you on, and we haven't named it yet, but it actually restores the function of hair growth in the human body.
You know what? I got to tell you, I have to sometimes stop and just shake my head, because I don't know why people aren't doing what I'm doing. And I think part of it is that everybody's looking for the latest and greatest chemical, where I know the best place to mine as a miner, mine these opportunities is in nature. Nature's brought us all this stuff. It's sitting there to be mined. And I go out and I look at molecular homology of different drugs and how they work, and then try to find the homologous or similar structure of those compounds in nature and extract them. And in this case, you're talking about hair. You should have saw my hair a year ago. I was almost completely bald.
It was almost gone.
Completely bald. And we've been doing research for a year on this compound, one molecule in particular, on hair follicles and tissue with hair, showing how we're resuscitating the different subcellular proteins that go dormant in the context of hair loss. And we did that on the bench. And I said, okay, we have to do a clinical trial now because this is unbelievable. But in the meantime, I'm not waiting. I'm not gonna sacrifice anybody else, but I'm doing it myself. And in 3 weeks of putting this stuff on my head at nighttime,
your hair grew back.
Like I said, like, what? Come on, this can't be. In fact, I didn't tell my girlfriend anything that I was. She said, "What happened to your hair?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And she says, "It's growing." And I said, "Yeah, I know it's growing, but not only that, half of the gray was gone. It was turning black." And so I said, "Okay, you know what? I'm not even going to say anything to anybody because I'm embarrassed of having all these technologies that are working." And it's like, is this for real? I said, so I gave some to Mike. I gave some to other people. They tried it. Like, this is working. So we got pictures 3 weeks later. Yep, it's definitely working.
So this is a really big deal. I can't tell you the number of women that are having baldness right now. It's because of the autoimmune conditions, especially young women. We have a large percentage of women who are in their 30s, their mid 30s to early 40s, that are starting to get balding spots or thinning and just like they're in their 70s.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to go into why that is. It's an autoimmune condition. This is what our program, our 28-day reset, is meant to help people with. We reduce the stress. We give the body the ability to heal. We work the fascia. I know in my own personal life, my hair has grown back. Cynthia stopped dyeing her hair. She used to have to dye it, and also she had like a very thick part line that was basically a balding spot. That's all gone away before the hair product. But so if I was to take this, even with me, without having a hair issue, what would that do for me? Is that beneficial?
Well, at this point, we believe that it will actually thicken the hair because we've seen it thicken hair on people that look like they had reasonably good hairlines. The challenge is, for myself, the front of my head is where I started more recently losing my hair. The back is where it's been gone for decades, and for at least a decade. And that, when the hair follicle dies, you can't resuscitate it; it's gone, and so that's not coming back. But as it's slowing down, you can prevent the complete loss of that hair from the hair follicle by regenerating.
So I could have my hair basically going, but the follicle is still okay. It just needs a stimulation.
Yep.
And what this is doing, is this triggering a gene?
What it's doing is it's actually it's releasing the inhibitory effect of compounds that might be inhibiting various proteins in the actual hair follicle, and then allowing it to do its job. And we've actually seen the proteins escalate in concentration inside the cell, and now we're starting to see it outside the cell as you apply topically. Somebody
asked, is your product 5-alpha reductase?
No, it's not.
Yeah.
5-alpha reductase inhibits the conversion of testosterone to DHT.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah. And here's an interesting thing. I mean, there's a lot of DHT inhibitors in the marketplace that work well to prevent further loss of hair, but there's side effects to that because you reduce libido, you reduce androgenic drive, and most men who use those know, I want to keep my hair using that alpha reductase inhibitor. I'm not performing as well in the bedroom. And so it's kind of like, you're throwing.
Yeah. I got my hair, but there ain't no love tonight here.
And we have something for that. We have something for that we haven't patented yet, and I'll tell you, it works better than anything we've tried.
Oh my gosh! I forgot. I wanted to try that. Yeah, honestly, I just I did. I'm going to get you to give me some samples of that. That's the ED product they have. And what I like about, again, so here's the thing. We are focusing on natural source, and I believe in the body's ability to heal anything. We're going through a healing process. You've watched my journey for the last year change, You've seen massive changes in me, massive changes in my team. We believe that if we're adding what's accelerated our changes, because we had been already making those changes, was the addition of your products. And that's why we're partnered with you. And oh yeah, I got H2 water experts. I want to try this so bad. But look at, I've got somebody here, just like, I've got my 20-year-old son who needs it. This is becoming a major issue. And we believe because it's the toxicity of everything that's happening in today's world. The small intestine is shut down on everybody. Contraction of the fascia. You know what? When I studied the body, we were 80% water. Today, officially, they're saying textbooks are saying 65 to 70%. And I'm like, what changed? The only thing that changed is we're more dehydrated, we're more concentrated, there's less stuff moving around, and it's causing an inhibitory factor to just general movement of food and nutrition through the body. And so we're going to be coming out with this product. I think we have 16 samples, you said?
Well, we've got enough to make. We did a pilot trial again, another pilot trial. We've got 16 or 17 samples coming.
We have 17,
I'm
16 or 17 you out there.
We're keeping about half of those for our office because everybody's beating on me here. They're like, what? Like everybody, but we'll be able to disseminate a whole bunch of that.
So when are we going to be able to have this product, roughly to our audience? Because this is a big one.
We can go manufacture. We've it's taken us a year to actually get the scaling and all the details right. We're ready to go.
So we're talking like probably within the next 60 days or so, we'll be able to deliver a product. We have to name it, get it out there. We're thinking of some pretty cool names right now, but we're going to be bringing this to the market. So listen, we're going to end this part of it here. I want to just have somebody ask some questions. If anybody has some questions for Franco while we have him on here, people have been watching patiently. We'll take a few questions. And if you have family or friends that have autoimmune issues, if you have family or friends who have inflammatory disease processes, they've got cancer, they've got anything else, and you want a question, feel free to ask the question in here in the chat, and we're going to answer. And while we're doing this, and send this out to a couple of people too. So Franco, do you still have a couple minutes? Are you good for this?
I do, yes, for sure.
Okay, so I'll ask a couple questions myself. So when I want to increase my testosterone, and this is a very big common question that we get all the time. How would I use your products to do it? Which products would I use, and how would it work?
Well, that's a difficult one. Our ashwagandha is recognized and known to be something that supports male libido and testosterone. To be perfectly honest, I mean, I've not seen consistent results in terms of testosterone elevation. However, what we find is a different mechanism that releases when your body produces testosterone, it becomes bound. So if you ever had your testosterone checked in blood work, they'll test for overall total count. They'll test for bound testosterone and then free testosterone. The free testosterone is the stuff that does what you want it to do. Now, the bound testosterone is protected. It's almost like a storage site. So what we're finding is a lot of these compounds, including the ashwagandha, instead of actually releasing more testosterone, free the bound testosterone so that it's active again. And
wow.
And so, in order to actually allow that to happen, a lot of these natural compounds, that's how they function. And then you get an immediate stimulatory effect. The problem is you don't get long-term effects from that unless you're doing that every day to free it, because it'll right away go back and the body will protect itself from the extra testosterone. And I say protect itself because it thinks it only needs a certain amount. But, if you want Superman activity, then you've got to keep freeing that guy. You know what I mean?
So we found, so our answer is that the greatest inhibitor of testosterone is adrenaline, norepinephrine, and cortisol.
Yeah.
So what we do is our 15-minute stress reset takes that down by 75 to 90% in 15 minutes. We say that do that 1 to 2 times per day. We tell people to get their body hydrated, because if the body is in chronic stress, chronic dehydration, because the lack of silica is the most common. If we take the chronic dehydration out, and we reset the stress every day, it's just over time, natural testosterone goes up. And we found that it's the 28th day, literally. The 28th day, it's like the world changes. It's because we call it the human habituation cycle. That's why we go to rehabs for 28 days. A second here, we got a question here. Have MS affecting tongue function, swallowing, and speech? Any recommendations? So if somebody had MS and they had tongue function, swallowing and speech, you can actually DM us and we'll give you some movements for that as well. So send in a DM. But what would you say from those products that we're talking about today?
Well, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I think the power curve, the curcumin, is one of the best factors to utilize. Almost every single disease, you know, MS included in the brain, is associated with inflammatory activity, whether the inflammatory activity itself is a primary cause of the symptom and the disease, or it's a secondary issue. And usually in the case of a lot of diseases, it's a secondary issue that escalates alongside the primary disease. And it amplifies disease, it creates oxidation, because inflammatory activity and oxidation go hand in hand, and they propagate each other. So, you know, in the power curve, you've got a powerful antioxidant, you've got a powerful anti-inflammatory agent. So using a lot of that does cross the blood-brain barrier, would help. And of course, you know, the old vitamin D, and then the maneuvers you guys are working with.
So if we have somebody else here that says, I actually know the answer to this one because I know it's coming up in your world, statin replacement. So they say removing plaque from arteries. They know it's hardened. They're on statins. How would the current offering help them of those three products, or would it? And I know you have one that's coming out specifically to address that.
Yeah, so a very interesting concept. We've all known that, you know, curcumin has a very mild effect on improving lipid levels, including cholesterol management and LDL management, but it's not reliable, it's not significant. What we found is that the curcumin 3 that we actually isolated and increased in the BDMC 30 and curcumin 2 both have effects that improve cholesterol management by inhibiting HMG-CoA. And HMG-CoA is the same enzyme that the statin drugs inhibit to help you manage your cholesterol. And so curcumin 3 works as in BDMC 30 in a mild way, but curcumin 2 has a much more effective way. We've patented that as well, and then we're able to now create technologies that will be curcumin 2 elevated for cholesterol management, while the curcumin 3 has about 35 to 40% the effectiveness of that curcumin 2 in the process.
So you've got these constituents that you've been studying, like the curcumin and the ashwagandha, and you can actually, you're literally creating dozens, if not, and now in the future, hundreds of different products out of the research that you've just done on these alone, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And the thing is that, you know, we're not miracle makers. We're just basically looking carefully at what nature has to offer. I'm taking pharmaceutical drugs, looking at the homology, looking at the molecular structure of the drug, then finding the one that will work naturally in similar context. And then we run the research using the pharmaceutical drug as the positive control.
Yes. So that's why we can't deny it, because we all agree on the pharmaceutical already. That's how it got through. So the
only thing left now, so that we have the full runway open, is to do the clinical trials. And Health Canada just approved a clinical trial for us with our BDMC curcumin on COVID treatment and influenza and lung disease treatment.
So here's one we get all the time, like your take on it. We normally with curcumin, we take pepper to enhance the effects. Why is PowerCurc not needing pepper?
Well, the pepperine or pepper is normally used to improve bioavailability of curcumin or other agents. And in our case, you know, the bioavailability and the effectiveness, it does not need any support. So we don't want to cloud and dilute the potential of the full impact of the curcuminoids that we've selected. Keep in mind, this is not regular curcumin. This is a fraction with a patented technology that changes the proportions of these curcuminoids, and therefore changes the pharmacology and the pharmacokinetics. And that means how it travels through the body to the target tissues.
So we had somebody that said, but cholesterol is good for you. And I'd like you to answer that one, because that's a common one.
Yeah. Well, we need cholesterol for cell structure, our cell membranes and other hormones, are made with a backbone of cholesterol. Of course, we need cholesterol. We shouldn't be inhibiting it. There are people, though, that make too much of it. Now, most of the time, you make too much of it because of your diet. A high glycemic, believe it or not, high glycemic index diet, which is made up of largely high glycemic index carbohydrates. Carbohydrates then cause your body to make more cholesterol. And in some people, if you are prone to that, then you may need to slow that down. Never to inhibit it, because you do, in fact, need cholesterol for healthy cells and healthy body.
Okay, sure. So somebody asked us which product would help with fibromyalgia. First of all, fibromyalgia, let's just be very clear, it's not a disease, it's a syndrome.
Syndrome, yeah.
Which means that they don't know. If we touch pain points in the body, first and foremost, we believe that the body's designed to heal itself. The machine has to work. Movement is the cure for everything. The original movement is breath, and every restriction we have restricts the way our body processes oxygen. And so that's why, but in fibromyalgia, if somebody had that, what would you tell them in our three products? Which one would you take?
The curcumin biomedical, the power curc. We've had people with fibromyalgia say it's changed my life.
Yeah, I mean, we have it every day. Fibromyalgia is, to be honest with you, in our 28-day reset fibromyalgia, we haven't had one that I've tracked. I haven't had a case that I've tracked that has done the 28-day reset, that went through our process, that hasn't reduced or eliminated their symptoms within the first or second month. It says, one person says, understand the curcumin can help with preventing new plaque, but what about the current hardened plaque? You have hardened, basically it's already there. What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, it's not easy to remove, but you just have to be persistent. So there's two things that the curcumin does. It's interesting. You can slow down the production of extraordinary amounts of cholesterol, for one. Two, the plaque itself is created by an immune response to the original goopy mess of cholesterol that's been oxidized. So think about this. If you have too much cholesterol, normally it becomes oxidized because your body is oxidative and not functioning properly. So the oxidation oxidizes the goopy cholesterol, which then causes it to be goopy and stick to your arteries. And then the immune system comes around and says, my gosh, I don't recognize this stuff. We need to plaque this and keep it away from the body. And it creates a plaque. So there's three things that happen. You need to have an anti-inflammatory, you need to have a cholesterol reducing agent, and you need to have an antioxidant all in one. And that's the BioBDMC. If you're taking statin drugs, you don't stop your statin drugs and replace them, because you want to make sure that you titrate and you actually look at blood work to make sure things are working the way they're supposed to be working. But that's the pharmacology of what we're doing in terms of the curcumin 2 product.
So here's another one. Reverse kidney disease. We don't reverse or cure anything, but the body's meant to cure itself. The body, by the way, technically true. If I have a cut, I put a Band-Aid on it. Band-Aid doesn't cure me. If I have a surgery doesn't cure me. It just gives my body the space to do what it already does. Body cures itself. End of story. If it's not curing itself, we're trying to find ways to help it. So it says, how will this help for kidney disease?
Well, I mean, there's different types of kidney disease. I mean, it's hard to pin that down. I can't really, unless you understand, what the source of the disease is, it's hard to say. Typically, regardless of what you have as a disease, you're going to have some sort of inflammatory activity as an underpinning for the disease, because inflammation is what characterizes every single disease, the chemistry of every disease. It's what propagates.
Take out the inflammation and move.
Yeah, you take out the inflammation and you're taking away the edge, and hopefully giving the body an opportunity to heal.
So somebody asked about osteoporosis, osteopenia. So osteoporosis, guys, here's one of the biggest issues. The blood is a regulator. It's like the radiator in your car. It's meant to keep it hot cool when you're hot and hot when you're cold. And if your body is not if your body does not have the right constituents in it and it's working properly, so if you don't have enough calcium, your body will steal calcium from your bones to put it into the blood. You do that for 20 years and you have osteoporosis, osteopenia. So what we're saying back in is this happens because we have a body, when we're babies, we're predominantly silica. And then as we get older, we calcify. Calcify, we don't move as well, right? So as we add silica back into our diets and move the body, the calcification of the body reduces. And we find things like, and we hydrate the body, we find things like osteoporosis. have a chance, because it's back to absorption of minerals. We're back to our stomach. And somebody said, do you have to fix your gut before you take this product? And the whole point is, this is helping you fix your gut. If you have a gut problem, you have inflammation. If you have inflammation, it's a cascading series of problems, right?
Well, the factor of bone and osteoporosis, as you put it, I mean, it's a very interesting concept. We have on the surface of all your bone, we have what's called osteoclasts and osteoblasts, and these are active cells. Osteoclasts break down the bone tissues, and between the osteoclast and the osteoblast, you are constantly remodeling bone. Every molecule of that bone over 6 to 7 months has been turned over. Can you believe that? It's like a new molecule. And what's happening is the osteoclast activity breaks it down, and the calcium and the minerals end up in the bloodstream, where your body is going to need these minerals as enzymatic function. These are cofactors for enzyme activity. Then you have the osteoblasts that are picking it up and putting it back into bone to remodel the bone. That's loaded with inflammation, even from an autoimmune condition where it's prolific and systemic inflammation, activates the osteoclast. So it becomes more active than the osteoblast, and you continue to spew out minerals from your bone slower than the osteoblast is putting them back, and you begin to develop osteoporosis because of a pro-inflammatory state in the body. And silica actually helps to counter that. It helps to counter the activity, so it balances the activity. And silica actually makes up a lot of the connective tissue in the bone matter, but it also facilitates absorption of these minerals and assimilation into the tissue. So does the anti-inflammatory effect of the curcumin. If you look up osteoclast and osteoblast activity and pro-inflammatory activity, it is the primary cause of osteoporosis. It doesn't matter how much calcium you throw into your body, right, it's going to end up in your bloodstream, and it could contribute to blood clotting if it's not being put into mineralization.
I'm so sick of people saying, you're low on this, take it. It's not how the body works.
No.
It is absolutely the worst piece of advice is to, if I'm missing an element, to take the element, is to find out why I'm missing the element and deal with that. So people, like we get this all the time. Somebody asks what's a good source of silica. The Fascial Foundation is with the diatomaceous earth, which is 80% silica, highly observable. It's the best source that we have. Another good source we recommend is horsetail. And then silicon dioxide is the last. It'll work, but we prefer the natural. And they ask for dosing recommendations on diatomaceous earth. We start with 1 teaspoon per day. Then we work up to 2, then 3. I'll do that over a course of 2 weeks usually, up to 5. And if it's silica, it's 600 milligrams, I think, is silica. You may correct me. It's 600 milligrams of silica if you're taking it from horsetail.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. Depends on the concentration. Horsetails, you get different types of horsetail that have a different concentration. So
it's the same problem we had before. It could be, it could be not be. So the power curve for arthritis, absolutely. That's literally what we say. First thing about arthritis, take power curve. You can buy do these supplements help the gut? Yes, they do. I just noticed diatomaceous earth is causing some constipation for my family. Do you have a very consistent stool? Okay, if it's causing constipation, that's a high indicator that your body is massively dehydrated. I'm going to tell you right now that you need to get some water in your system. And also, on top of the diatomaceous earth, go get Irish sea moss. That's why our products are put together, or shilajit minerals. Or at worst, you get trace minerals. That's the lowest form of it, I think. People say, is there any side effects to these 3 supplements?
Well, in my opinion, I'd say no, but the reality is everybody's different. And we had this conversation a couple of days ago with someone else about single nucleotide polymorphisms. And we're like, what is that? And they're called SNPs. And in fact,
you lost me. You lost me at single.
In any genetic profiling that you may get for testing your gene pool, they're going to test for SNPs, and these are mild mutations that create differential metabolic issues for different people, and so you can't really be knowing exactly how all of these are going to affect every person every time. Nevertheless, for the major part, there's no side effects. But I can tell you, just for example, I had somebody calling me all the time. They said, when I take your curcumin, I start to get stomach pain. And I said, well, you probably have a stone, a gallbladder stone. And they're like, no, I don't have gallbladder stones. Well, I'm not saying you do, but every time you, because curcumin, what it does is it causes contraction of the gallbladder to allow your body to secrete bile. And that's good for your digestive system.
Yeah.
But if you have gallbladder stones that are too big to pass the duct, they get stuck in the duct and they cause pressure pain. And every time I take, well, not your curcumin, probably be any, yeah, I tried another one, same thing. Go to your doctor. You probably have a large gallstone that will not leave the gallbladder because it's too big. And she called me about 2 months later. You're right. I have gallbladder stones and they're massive.
I get it all the time. So what about IC, interstitial cystitis?
Bursitis, you said?
Oh, no, IC, interstitial cystitis. Yeah.
Well, so, you know, any itis is an inflammatory activity. I don't want to say this thing works for everything, and it doesn't, but you may be able to support symptom relief. You know, see your doctor. We have, if you look on our website, you can actually go to the link for our research, and it shows the pharmacology of at a subcellular level, the mechanics of the compounds, and your doctor will be able to tell you if it's going to work for that disease. I can tell you it's going to reduce the inflammation and potentially support, you know, and relieve symptom activity. But you talk to your doctor.
Somebody said, how do you ingest the product? And I can tell you that, I mean, it's oral in capsules. One thing I like about the Parker is I'm cooking Indian food. I cook for people who don't want to take supplements, and I use my curcumin in there, and they all are really happy at the end of the meal for some reason, smiling, laughing. But it is hydrophobic, so what we do is we put it into a smoothie. Water doesn't go in very well. I haven't tried to snort it. I'm not sure if that would work, but I know.
wouldn't recommend.
Yeah, I know the problem with snorting it would be I would have a very orange nose. I mean, if you touch that stuff, it gets everywhere. It even gets, okay, where can you buy supplements? Thank you for Serenity Now Wellness. We know who you are. You are a Scorpio. I know that for sure. Okay, Franco, I think we've got some good questions out here. I want to thank you for your time. We are going to be doing a series with you, and people are going to actually be able to, you guys are going to be contributing some content into our newsletter and into our blog. So people are going to get to know you that way. This is their first introduction to you officially. I mean, they met you last year when we launched it on TikTok, but this is your first introduction into our mainstream audience. Where can they find you? What's the best way to find you? And also, everything that you do, you have science papers, they can go on your website. They can actually look at the actual science, right? And look at the patents.
Yeah, we once, you know, for example, we have 2 papers right now that are in peer review. They're not published yet, but we're regularly publishing research that demonstrates the mechanisms of what, you know, we're doing and the activity of the products. You can look them up. There's links on our website. Our Instagram handle is Franco Cavaleri _ Potential Within. Potential Within is one of my best-selling books that actually covers so much ground. We're going to be doing a series on some of the content in there in a little while, and it dovetails with what you're doing. And then our website that has all the technology information is biologic-pharmamedical.com, pharmamedical.com.
And if somebody had a question, we're going to be posting this on our wall, and we'll be putting clips out. You'll be able to actually interact with Franco directly. Franco, do you mind answering questions for our audience?
100%. Yeah,
okay.
I have no problem with that. I love that. Yeah.
Okay, Franco, I really appreciate your time. Our partnership has been fantastic. I started in 2016, I guess, when you came down to Los Angeles. We used your products in clinic. They changed our clinic. Literally, it's part of the reason why our clinical practice was so successful is because we used your product.
Well, so thank you. It's a pleasure working with you always.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Franco. Have a really nice night.